I really should be reviewing Dead Snow, right? Or at least Misery again. But I'm not, actually. This isn't a horror review at all. I had to get some footage. How could I not get footage of this?
Uh, this would have been good for the Christmas special as well, but I'm not actually doing anything horror related in this video. So if you don't care about my non-horror opinions, that is absolutely fine. I won't be offended. Go and watch the Christmas special again if you want a bit of that. But if you're interested in why a vegan might be annoyed that there is more vegan food available, carry on watching. Chickens in the snow, guys. Chickens in the snow.
We have scene change. What can I say? Baby, it's cold outside. So to help explain my position, we have to understand that veganism is a tricky proposition. And we can best illustrate this by looking at the response to two vegan celebrity campaigns. So a while ago, it was a big deal when Beyonce and Jay-Z started a temporary vegan diet. You can see it on their website. It is their 22-day plant-based nutrition plan. They got a lot of praise for this, a lot of good publicity. They looked all ethical, and you can buy their 22-day plant-based nutrition plan on their website. The 22-day plant-based diet that they went on was portrayed as sort of healthy, health conscious, it was ethical, it was a cool aspirational lifestyle thing, and it was non-extreme. Now let's compare and contrast that with the response to Ellen DeGeneres when she complained about seal hunting. Ellen is very publicly vegan, she's quite a committed activist, and it should be surprising to absolutely no one that she's opposed to hunting. I kind of think please don't smack this adorable little thing with a giant metal spike would be a fairly easy sell to people, but that was not the case. Ellen got absolutely skewered and destroyed. The kind of outlets that were really happy about Beyonce and Jay-Z and you would expect would be pro-vegan and anti-animal cruelty, anti-smacking this little dude with a giant club, they all went for Ellen. And why was that? Well, it's because of acceptable targets. You really cannot understand intersectionality without understanding the concept of acceptable targets. You see, hunting very rarely gets defended. Lots of groups do it, but they don't usually get good press. When these guys try and defend hunting, they get ridiculed, kind of openly attacked. It's pretty standard to be against this in Britain. But these guys are able to emphasise their Inuit identity, their indigenous status, their minority status. By emphasising their Inuit identity, their indigenous position, they're able to very successfully reframe the debate, and Ellen got no support. She was seen as the bad person, and they were able to publish this kind of nonsense and not have it questioned. Interesting. If that framing seems arbitrary and confusing to you and a really bad argument, just remember when The Guardian supports it, it's called defending Indigenous communities, and when they oppose it, it's called opposing ethno-nationalism and fighting the blood and soil argument. Okay, now you get it. So for the two different responses to make sense, you really have to understand the framing. And Beyonce framing her dalliance with veganism as plant-based is incredibly important framing. You see, plant-based is increasingly the go-to label. You are going to see plant-based increasingly more instead of vegan, and that is a framing choice, and it's incredibly important because, as I've shown, veganism is quite a wide-ranging, quite a rigid idea, and it's incredibly divisive and highly controversial. I'm a vegan, I don't mind saying that. It is controversial, it is disruptive, it is divisive, and it's judgmental, absolutely. Plant-based isn't. Plant-based doesn't have that history. It's actually quite limited, it's quite new, and it's very flexible. What I mean is you can go to the plant-based aisle and select something from there, and it's not tied to the vegan philosophy. You can just have a meal. When you're going for that, you're not having to consider any ideological connections to the product. You're not considering it in the context of wider use of animals in society. You don't have to reconsider your clothing, your pharmaceuticals, and so on. There's really no commitment attached to eating plant-based food. I mean, for the moment, plant-based does have the Vegan Society stamp on it, but it isn't tied to that movement. It's literally just another option. And because it's not tied to any kind of ethical framework, If you eat plant-based, there's really no commitment made. And for that reason, plant-based eating can just be tried out, picked up, put down, dallied with, and if you suddenly fancy trying the new Korean spiced McChicken burger, then there's nothing to stop you, really. In short, you're not making any kind of ethical or ideological commitment when you pick up a plant-based meal. For a little sidetrack here, if you don't mind me indulging, something people might not be aware of is that vegan food used to actually be kind of hard to get. And I don't just mean like carrots and hummus or the sort of some traditional Indian cooking, but I mean the specialist stuff, the tofu, the seitan, the tempeh, all that good stuff. That used to be kind of hard to acquire. You used to have to go to specialist shops for it. For instance, I don't know if it's still going, but the Vegan Cross VX shop around King's Cross in London, that was exactly the kind of premise I'm talking about. It was largely run by volunteers. It had this amazing selection of specialist vegan food. And because it was run by dedicated vegans, it was pretty unashamedly vegan there. What I mean by that is there was a lot of activist material, posters and organising in there that was very unapologetically vegan, very actively judgmental of meat eating and, to an extent, meat eaters. Basically, it was framing and messaging that just would never fly in the plant-based aisle in Tesco. Tesco can't exactly put up a very brutal image of factory farming a couple of steps down from beef burgers, you know? And so the messaging and framing radically changes when bigger companies and supermarkets get in on the game. I really don't think it's accidental that with that wider promotion, veganism has been reframed as plant-based eating. And so I really don't think it's accidental that with this sort of wider adoption in bigger venues, that veganism has been reframed as plant-based. So you have this paradoxical situation where vegan food is increasingly available, but veganism isn't. What I'm arguing is that veganism has been defanged, reframed, and co-opted. I've had similar chats and thoughts about other movements, and I know it's controversial, but feminism is a very good example. Without trying to get into the validity of the aims and claims of feminism, we can focus on, say, the massive difference between the second wave feminism and the much more widely adopted third wave feminism. Second wave feminism is extremely controversial, openly radical, and very challenging to a lot of the foundations of society. It was also pretty darn limited in take-up. But third wave feminism, with the most obvious example of which is the sort of girl power messaging of the Spice Girls, that got huge corporate and public support, but it definitely wasn't the same messaging, and you can even argue it's not really the same campaign. I'd be really interested to know from second wave feminists if they thought the success of the third wave, the very big spread of that, was a victory for feminism. For instance, had some dangerous ideas or challenging concepts, disruptive premises been removed, been sort of cleaned off and sanitized in order to make it more appealing? Or to put it concisely, can you imagine mega corporations and broadcasters supporting second wave feminism's anti-porn stance the way they've openly embraced fourth wave feminism's message of empowerment via OnlyFans? And so back to veganism and the conundrum I face here. More people choosing to eat plant-based regularly means fewer animals being eaten, so I'm in favour of that. Now you can make a very convincing argument that because of the ethical component, veganism actually has kind of an intimidation factor. It's kind of got a high barrier to entry, like if I start vegan, I should probably carry on vegan. And that's something I absolutely felt. So you can say that plant-based food has a lower barrier to entry that might get more people on board. Because there's that low barrier to entry, that's great. A lot of people might start trying plant-based, but without the ethical component, what really stops you from just dropping it, from just going back to meat? Framing of plant-based diets just kind of turns veganism into a product and a commodity, something to try on, try out and drop if you're bored, rather than an ideological commitment to reducing the suffering of animals. There's also a more subtle danger of being adopted by much bigger outlets. The that is very similar to the issue feminism faced. Mass availability of an undeniably great range of products at a cheaper price does mean that, as a downside, no one needs to go to the more radical vegan outlets anymore. No one who's curious about a vegan diet and lifestyle is going to encounter anything particularly challenging or strongly worded in the plant-based aisle at Sainsbury's. Also, the food aspect, the dietary angle, is usually the gateway to a sort of full embrace of veganism. And plant-based framing, I find, actually locks that veganism in purely to the realm of diet and food. It stops you considering it in other areas. I feel with the plant-based framing, you're not going to look at your clothes, you're not going to look at, why there's animal fat in your fabric softener and so on. Are you going, Gatsby? He's gone. I also just think the ethical element cannot be communicated in a supermarket. So supermarkets have decided now that there are enough vegans to sell to, now that they can make a profit, and they'll make all sorts of noise about being proudly anti-racist, they'll get all the rainbows out for pride, all that good stuff, but they're never going to be able to go all out against animal cruelty whilst they're still selling chicken burgers in the next aisle. So the plant-based framing, the supermarkets can get all the vegan customers, but also keep them nicely distanced from anything too radical, too challenging, anything that would make them challenge their wider consumption. When the vegan ethical aspect is taken out, the supermarkets really aren't in any danger of protests over the rest of the things they sell. In short, with the plant-based framing, veganism is thoroughly defanged. It's just a diet that you can pick up and put down, start and stop whenever you fancy, and no judgment of anyone. Now, obviously, I am hugely biased in this discussion. I'm a vegan and I would love some wide-scale consciousness raising and mass change of habits around how animals are treated and eated in our society. With plant-based eating, I think the messaging makes that a lot harder to achieve. I think the plant-based label is a reframing and a co-option that moves veganism and all its challenges and messaging and ideology firmly out into the box for extremes, out of the question, outside the Overton window, and not a threat anymore. And then safely back in the supermarket, the choice between a beef burger and a seitan burger is no longer an ethical choice, it's just a matter of consumer preference, when I think it's absolutely crucial that it retains the moral dimension. It is no small irony that, vegans have been calling for greater availability, a greater range, and of course increased affordability of vegan products for ages now, and now you can pretty much get them in every single supermarket. But I feel the danger is that veganism has now been effectively taken out of the hands of vegans. And as I hope I've explained, that change from vegan to plant-based is far bigger than a name change. I hope you found that interesting. Don't worry, we are back to horror next week. I just thought I'd share my thoughts and hopefully have to do a lot less editing than I had to do for the Christmas special. If you found this interesting, please do like the video and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And if you didn't, then heck, subscribe and leave me a comment telling me to get back to horror. Both are fine. I'll see you next week. Thanks, y'all. Cheers. Blair, come on. First time in the snow, by the way. First time. Hello, chickens. Oh, Angie. Come on, Vangie. Snow is not particularly popular with the girls, it seems. Who knew?